Good morning. How are you guys today? Thank you for viewing with us this morning. Welcome to Bible class with Andre and Betty. We're continuing our study in chapter 8 of the Gospel of Luke from last week. We are going to begin today in chapter 8, Luke chapter 8, verse 26. And we're continuing with the thought in mind of Jesus preaching and teaching the gospel of salvation. And so here we go in verse 26, refers back to verse 22, where they got on a ship and Jesus said, "Let us go to the other side." Well, in verse 26, we'll see where the other side was, and it's the country of the Gadarenes. Now, this same episode is recorded in Matthew chapter 8 and Mark chapter 5. So it would be good to study all three accounts to get the full picture of what is happening in these verses. And so verse 26 says, "And they arrived at the country of the Gadarenes, which is over across from or against Galilee." Verse 27, "And when he went forth to land, there met him out of the city a certain man, which had devils long time, and wear no clothes, neither abode in any house, but in the tombs." Now in Matthew, he records that there met him two, but he doesn't identify who the two are. But the two is the devil and the man who was called, seen as a maniac at Gadara. And so this is the man and the devils are the two that is recorded in Matthew. And he didn't live in a house, but he lived in the graveyard or amongst tombs. Verse 28. When he saw Jesus, this is the devil, when he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell down before him, before Jesus, with a loud voice said, "What have I to do with thee, Jesus, Son of God Most High? I beseech thee, torment me not." And since Jesus defeated the devil in the wilderness after he had fasted 40 days, from that time to now, the devil recognized who Jesus is and know that he is the Son of God. And so this demon or devil is begging Jesus to not torment me, but we'll see that the one is many. At least 2,000 demons possess this man. Verse 29, "For he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man." Jesus had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man, for oftentimes the unclean spirit, had caught him, the man, and he was kept bound with chains and in fetters. And he brake the bands of the chains and were driven of the devil into the wilderness. Now this is an explanation of what the encounter with this man who was a maniac or possessed with devils experienced. Verse 30, "And Jesus asked him," that is the unclean spirit, saying, "What is thy name?" And he said, Legion, because many devils were entered into him, into the man, that certain man that was in the place of Gadara. And so he was possessed with devils, verse 31. And they, that is the devils, besought him that he would not command them to go out into the deep or out into the ocean. 32. And there was there a herd of many swine feeding on the mountains, and they besought him, the devils besought him, that he would suffer them to enter into them. And he suffered them. He allowed the unclean spirits to go into the swine. And Jesus has a purpose for allowing them to go into the swine, because they're going to be drowned. The swine are going to be drowned, and that signifies that the devils can no longer enter this man again, because he is being saved by Jesus. Not that the devils won't be in the world, but for this man, Jesus will secure his salvation and not allow these devils, unclean spirits, to go back and hurt this man. And so verse 33 says, Then went the devils out of the man and entered into the swine. And the herd ran violently down a steep place into the lake and were choked. They died. Verse 34, When they that fed them saw what was done, they fled and went and told it in the city and in the country of the Gadarenes. 35. Then they went out, these people the ones that were feeding the swine saw what had happened. They told the people, and now the people are going out to see what was done. Verse 35. Then they went out to see what was done, came to Jesus, and found the man out of whom the devils were departed, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. And they, the people, were afraid. So they could not, because they knew about this man and how dangerous he was, when they saw him sitting clothed and in his right mind, they feared, or they were afraid. And they also, verse 36, which saw it, told them by what means he that was possessed of the devils was healed. Then the whole multitude, verse 37, of the country of the Gadarenes round about besought him to depart from them, for they were taken with great fear. And he went up into the ship and returned back again. Now we'll see in verse 40, when he returns back, in the meantime, I think in the Gospel of Matthew and Mark, the man that was healed of being possessed of the devils, Jesus, he had gone back and preached to the people about what Jesus had done for them, done for him. And his testimony, they're going to hear. And when he returns, then the people will gladly receive him. And so now we're in verse 38. It says, Now the man out of whom the devils were departed besought him, this man besought him, that he might be with him. This man wanted to follow Jesus. But Jesus sent him away, saying, Return to thine own house and show how great things God had done unto thee. And he went his way and published throughout the whole city how great things Jesus had done unto him. Now, this is the only place that I've been able to find where Jesus gave a person permission to go and tell what had happened to them, except this man, the only one I've seen that Jesus said, go and tell the people what I did for you. And verse 40, it says, and it came to pass that when Jesus was returned, that was what he said in verse 37, and returned back again. And it came to pass that when Jesus was returned, the people gladly received him, for they were all waiting for him. And this is the result of the man who had been healed, of his witness and testimony to the people of what Jesus had done for him. And then verse 41 will begin to tell about Jairus' daughter and the woman with the issue of blood. And so verse 41 says, and behold, there came a man named Jairus, who was a ruler of the synagogue. And he fell down at Jesus' feet and besought him or begged him that he would come into his house. Now this is recorded also in Matthew and Mark, this episode that's taking place. And so this ruler of the synagogue had a daughter, and she was sick and about to die, and then she's gonna die, and then Jesus will come and heal her. Verse 42, for he had one only daughter, this is Jairus, for he had one only daughter about 12 years of age, and she lay a-dying, but as he went, the people crowded him or thronged him. That is, they were so tight and the multitude was crowding him. Verse 43, and a woman, so he's on his way to heal this little girl, but now in the meantime, this woman with an issue of blood comes into the picture. Verse 43. And a woman having an issue of blood 12 years, which had spent all her living upon physicians, neither could be healed of any. After spending all of her money, she could not be healed by any physician that she had seen. Then she came behind him in verse 44 and touched the border of his garment, and immediately her issue of blood was staunched, or it was stopped. Verse 45, and Jesus said, who touched me? When all denied, Peter and they that were with him said, Master, the multitude throng thee and press thee, and sayest thou, who touches me? Verse 46, and Jesus said, somebody has touched me, for I perceive that virtue is gone out of me. And I'm just going to take a moment to tell you all that when I was about 12 years old is when I was born again. And after sitting listening to the sermons for a whole week, that Friday night, it was as if I was drawn by the Holy Spirit, and I came forth and asked the preacher I've forgotten the words I used, but I asked the Lord to save me, and I was baptized. So when I read this passage, I think about the time that Jesus drew me to himself and that he touched me that night or that evening. And so Jesus knew that somebody had touched him because his virtue or he could feel the power of healing go out of himself. Verse 47. And when the woman saw that she was not hid, or that he had seen her, she came trembling and falling down before him. She declared unto him before all the people for what cause she had touched him, and how she was healed immediately. So she gives an open confession of what God had done for her. And he said unto her in verse 48, Daughter, be of good comfort. Thy faith had made thee whole. Go in peace. And I believe this wholeness included every part of her life that she needed to survive and to prosper. And verse 49 is going to pick up where he left off with going to Jairus' house. Verse 49, while he yet spake, there cometh one of the ruler of the synagogue's house, saying to him, Thy daughter is dead, trouble not the master. Verse 50, but when Jesus heard it, he answered him, saying, Fear not, believe only, and she shall be made whole. So, even though his servants are telling him that the child is dead, Jesus says, Fear not, just believe. And so we will see that his daughter, this ruler of the synagogue's house, will be made whole. Verse 51, and when he came into the house, he suffered or allowed no men to go in, save Peter and James and John, and the father and the mother of the maiden. Verse 52, and all wept and bewailed her, but he said, Weep not, she is not dead, but sleepeth. And in Matthew 9:24, it says, he said, Give place. So this verse explains what he meant when he said, Give place. He was saying, Weep not, in Matthew 9:24. Verse 53, and they laughed him to scorn, knowing that she was dead. Verse 54, and he put them all out and took her by the hand and called, saying, Maid, arise. And in Mark 5, verse 4, he says, Talitha cumi, which means, young lady, arise. And so Luke does not use the word Talitha. And I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. But anyway, I think you all may know what I'm talking about. Verse 55. And her spirit came again when he said, Maid, arise. Her spirit came again, and she arose straightway. And he commanded to give her food or meat. Verse 56. And her parents were astonished, but he charged them that they should tell no man what was done. And this Jesus works many miracles, and he'll tell people not to tell anyone, but he did allow the man who had been delivered from being possessed with devils to go and tell. And so Jesus is continuing to teach and to preach the gospel of salvation as he ministers to people through miracles, signs, and wonders. And Jesus is still working miracles in our lives every day. So thank you all for being patient with me and for listening. And I appreciate your support and encouragement. Be sure and subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe, like, and share if you will, and share with your friends and family. So you all have a great day and a great week, and we'll see you next time. Bye.